Hey everybody, and welcome to Whimsically Wicked, a reading duet. My name is Haylee. I am the whimsical half.
And my name is Daria, and I am the wicked half.
Oh my gosh, it is happening. We're here and we're doing it.
I know it feels like forever, and it really was only a couple months, but it feels like forever that we've been talking about this.
Yeah, and we've been so excited and we've put so much work into getting this done, and it's here, and I'm just so excited to do this with you.
Same. I don't think I can think of anyone better to do it with.
That was really cute. What I think inspired us to start a podcast and to start embarking on this journey together was how different we are. This is going to be a reading podcast, and honestly, we almost could not be more different when it comes to our reading.
I think what we have in common is fantasy and high fantasy. We've read a lot of the similar books in that genre, but every step we take outside of high fantasy is a step in the opposite direction.
Further and further apart.
Yeah. I read a lot of romance these days, a lot of dark romance, and Haley is more on the contemporary side of things.
That is correct. But we have a really exciting topic of conversation for you today. But what I think would be the best is for us to just introduce each other a little bit and have everyone get to know us.
Question time.
All right, Daria, I want to know what got you into reading.
I moved a lot as a kid, and books were one of the biggest things I could take with me from place to place. I couldn't take my friends, but I could take all my friends and books. I think the first series I really got into, and this is kind of important for context, but I am dyslexic, so I wasn't really into reading very much when I was really young. I say really young. My friend read me Harry Potter at 5 years old. I think I was in kindergarten, and she read it out loud to me. It was the first series I think I fell into, fell in love with, and really sparked my love of books. And then from there, I think I fell off a little bit, picked it back up with Aragon, and since then it has been an absolute monster. Some of these books behind me have moved with me for the past 20 years, if not more, and they are probably one of the biggest constants in my life.
And they brought you to me.
That they did. All right, Haley, why do you love reading?
I also started reading at a really young age, and to be fair, our similarities show here. The books that got me into reading was definitely Harry Potter, around the same age, 4 or 5 years old. I am completely deaf in my left ear, and I have been since I was born. And that made it really hard for me, especially as a kid, to make friends and be in social situations. I couldn't hear my teachers half of the time, and I was ignoring kids a lot. So, reading really became this escape and this way for me to not miss things that are happening around me and not miss conversations. I got to experience and take in every single thing and every single word that reading gave me, and it just became an escape for me. I was the same. I went in and out of reading throughout my childhood and my early adult years. Throughout that time, I got into Jackson and Lord of the Rings. Huge Lord of the Rings nerd. And from there, I was like Mortal Instruments fan. And as I grew up and got back into reading around like 23, 24 of age, I really got into like the Throne of Glass series, and now I have finally found my way into the Cosmere universe by Brandon Sanderson, and I am in the fantasy era.
Cosmere is always the end all be all for me. They're some of the best books I've ever read. Way of Kings will be my favorite series of all time until the day I die. That is definitely where we started diverging because I think you went through Percy Jackson. I did do Mortal Instruments. I consider those a romance. But I also did Twilight, Vampire Academy, Vampire Diaries. There's another one in there that I can't remember. Oh, Marked series. I don't remember what that was actually called, but I remember the crescent moons on the cover. And I think that's definitely where we started diverging was my love of romance probably started around there. And then also a lot, so much high fantasy mixed in.
And I almost went that contemporary direction where I wanted to feel things and I wanted to talk about what was right and wrong and feel really deeply about the world. Like I loved Hunger Games, I loved dystopian novels like The Maze Runner, The Knife of Never Letting Go. That might be a weird one, but those were one of my favorite series. And that's kind of the direction that I took. So current state, what is your favorite genre?
My favorite genre right now is romance. I have done a lot of high fantasy. I think there's not a ton of big series in that world I haven't read already. And for me right now, romance is just the thing that gets me happy. I love falling in love with these characters, with their romances, with who they are and what they do. And for me, especially, I really enjoy dark romance. And for me, what dark romance is a lot of the empowerment of women. I find dark romance is a way for people to express themselves in a way that may not be conventional for everyone, but can be really empowering and really cathartic for people. And it's something we're going to touch on in our episode next week in talking on mental illness. But I find dark romance is one of the best therapies.
An interesting thought. We will come back to that. um, and on my side of things, I almost repel romance. I definitely stepped into my high fantasy journey, specifically with the Cosmere universe. I'm talking Pierce Brown, George R. R. Martin, those types of authors. I am a big map girly. I love new maps, just not like the real life maps. I like fake fantasy maps. And I really like to escape and dive into complex magic systems and kingdoms and all of those things that make me think really deeply, that I find really creative. And I also really like intense and intricate character relationships and character development, specifically non romantic ones, I would say. And when I read, I really like to think and feel very deeply about the world and what is right, what is wrong. And that also brought me into my contemporary fiction era, where I get to see a lot of morally gray people make really interesting decisions, and have a really hard time. I love the feeling of bittersweet and sad endings. It's just, I think I get that same cathartic feeling that you do when you read romance.
And that's, I think, what the end of the day, like reading is for so many people is the feeling. I'm not necessarily here for, at least not all the time, for the story, but I'm here for the way the story made me feel.
I do love myself a hero's journey, though. My Bilbo Baggins got me into it, and I'll never get out.
What are, let's say, three of your current favorite books?
Okay, current favorite. I've had a decent amount of five-star reads so far this year, so I'll stick within at least the last 7 or 8 months. First things first, I am only like 60% of the way through The Way of Kings right now, and I can already tell you that the Cosmere universe in general is going to be an all time favorite of mine, but the Stormlight Archives is on another level. Holy.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, wow. I am having such a good time. I tried to finish that book in like less than 2 weeks, and then I just decided, you know what, screw that. I am taking my time and I'm going to enjoy every single second of this because I am just absolutely loving the magic system and the characters, and I can't wait to continue this journey. Second recent series that has been a favorite is definitely the Red Rising series. I've only read the first 3 books, but what an incredible rebellion hero story. Character development is next level. Everything happens so fast. The books are not particularly large, but they jam pack so much in there. You never know what's going to happen, and they're so brutal. I'm such a huge fan of that series. And then we would not be able to make it through this video without me mentioning A Little Life. That book messed me up last year.
It really did. The crying videos were several hours apart on more than one occasion.
My cry count was 19.
I don't know if I can judge that much because I just finished Zodiac 9 and I think I cried for 2 straight hours.
Very different books.
Apparently similar feel.
But there's just something that there is something so poetic and so, I guess, cathartic again about reading something that is so sad. And there's just little touches of hope and happiness in there that just really fucks me up. But I do have a problem with that book and talking about that book.
Yeah, Haley's brought this book up on every single first date she's had since she read it, and I think that was like 9 months ago.
Dating is going really well for me.
Yeah, nothing better than the girl that cries on the first date over about a book.
And I still I'll still get home if I get home too late sometimes I'll still pick it up and read the last 20 pages and cry.
I feel like that needs your therapist's attention.
I do like my therapy, but we will talk about that next week. Um, what are your top 3 favorite books right now?
I'm gonna do from the past, honestly, from the past 2 months. Come to think of it, I number one would be The Soulful Seas Duet by Blake Black. It is an amazing why choose contemporary paranormal romance that I think just itched something I really needed it to at the time, which was a cute, cozy, small town, small Atlantic town romance that had some really amazing men in it and a really cool female main character. She was strong. She was a mechanic. I was like, that's dope. I wish I was a mechanic. Not really though, because I sit at a desk for 10 hours a day and I should not be outside. Because I'm allergic to the world. And then my second one, and I can very confidently say I don't know who I would be today if I hadn't read this book when I did it, but it's got a Fury by Rena Kent. And I think about this book more than I think is healthy. I love it. Nico and Brandon are some of my favorite characters of all time. Their love story is adorable. And I think my new favorite MMC is Psychotic Golden Retriever. It's just so.
I don't know that I could do that, but I love that you enjoyed it.
And then my last one is a tie between two books, which are very similar but also very different. And if you've read them, you probably know what I'm talking about. But that would be Mindfuck by St. Abbey and Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver. They're both serial killer romances, but one takes a much darker turn than the other. And I think they were both really good books for very different reasons. But I I don't think I could choose between the two of them for which one was my actual favorite for third place.
I feel like I've already read these books just knowing how much you've talked about them in the last little while.
My TikTok for God of Fury, there's quite a bit of content on there for it. I did a painting for it. One of my things for TikTok is I do paintings themed on books, and I did a really cool lotus flower in a style I don't normally paint in, and it turned out really fun.
It's gorgeous. You are insanely talented.
Thank you. I don't feel that way, but
Well, that is probably enough about us for now. You'll get to know us as we go through this journey. One of the biggest things that we wanted to do while we were starting this podcast was get each other out of our comfort zones and do that by recommending each other books in genres that we wouldn't typically read. So, welcome to Get Swapped. This first month, Daria recommended me a book.
yes. And I chose this book for some really specific reasons. Number one, I actually think it's a super accessible book for someone looking in to get into romance, and the periphery of dark romance. We're going to touch on that a little bit later, but I think this book, it's funny, it's cute, it's not very heavy in the ways most dark romances are, at least. Uh, it made me laugh a lot while I was reading it, so I thought it'd be a really good book to introduce someone to the romance genre with, and I think you'd agree.
We'll talk about it.
This is Haley's take on Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver.
All right, so when Daria first gave me this book to read, she gave me 3 very vague bullet points. Mostly because I like to go into my books blind, which is a problem, especially when it comes to my contemporary fiction, because I don't read the trigger warnings ahead of time. But she gave me 3 pieces of information about the book. So we're going to keep this part spoiler free in case you haven't read the book yet. First one was that you gave me the main 2 characters' professions. So he is a chef and
Mm-hmm.
she is a data scientist.
Oh,
The second being, I will never look at ice cream, specifically cookies and cream ice cream,
the cookies and cream is important.
the same way ever again.
Yep.
And the third one is that you had to look up 5 new piercings from this book.
Yes. And five may have been like a little bit of an exaggeration, but I am fairly heavily pierced, especially on my face. You may not be able to see it on the camera here, but I have lip, nose, well, two nose, ears, all of that. And I've had a couple other more creative piercings done in the past. And I had to Google what these ones were because I did not know. And yeah, I don't think I'd ever do them, but they're there.
So, Daria, spoiler free, let's just give our audience a little summary about what this book is about.
Yes. Okay. So this book, and this isn't really a spoiler because it's covered in the first chapter, are two main characters are serial killers, and they meet each other in a basement where one of them is trapped with her most recent kill, and he's there to, well, kill him too. But in this case, she got there first. And it's a really cute love story about how these two serial killers embark on a fun game of who is best at their favorite hobby, murdering people. So this book follows their journey through love, through some hard times, and ultimately happily ever after.
It wouldn't be a dark romance without a happily ever after.
You need a happily ever after.
So I had a really hard time rating this book, and I haven't made a decision on my rating yet. I want to know what it was that you liked so much about this book. You rated it 5 stars.
That 5 stars really comes from the way it made me feel. I read this book in one day. I think I stopped reading at 3 a.m. in the morning, and it was so much fun. I laughed. I definitely gagged a little bit. There was a lot going on there. Um, but I had so much fun with this book, and it was one that I was like, I could recommend this to so many people I know in so many aspects of my life who would actually really enjoy it and find it fun. And for me, I think a book's rating is not only based on how much I love that book, but also how much I could share it with everyone I love. And I think this was a good book for that. I have recommended it to so many people, so Haley included.
And what I think is so interesting, and you would agree with this, is that I don't think it's really considered a dark romance at the end of the day.
No. Um, if you've heard any of my rants on dark romance before, I try to keep that term to a very specific subset of books because I think there's a really big connotation that comes along with being a dark romance that not every book should be lumped into that group because it doesn't necessarily meet the requirements I at least have in my head for that. This book, though, covers some typically dark themes of like serial killers and murder. At the end of the day, it's a rom com. Like, you're going to laugh, it's going to be funny. It doesn't deal with the same degree of like trauma and abuse and BDSM and sadomasochism that typical romance, dark romance books cover. So I feel like if you call it a dark romance, you're like kind of giving it all of that other stuff. When really, it's a rom com. You're gonna laugh. You're gonna have a good time. They're gonna stab some people. But like, just because you murdered someone doesn't make it dark romance. Sadomasochism send you over the edge? If you don't know what that is, Google it. I'm not describing it for you. Because I would like my podcast to one day be monetized.
And you were like, should I say?
Yeah, and then I went with it because you know what? You can Google things.
Love it. And I think what I really had to do is put my ego aside a little bit because what I typically really enjoy reading is the big complex things that I have to think about, and you just didn't have to put that much deep thought into it. And I had to really focus on just being present in the moment and having fun. And once I was able to do that, I really did have such a good time with it. Instead of trying to really criticize all of the little pieces on the writing or maybe there's lack of development that I really wanted and craved from it, I was really able to sit back and just enjoy the story for what it was and be present. I literally finished this in under a day.
Which is crazy because Haley takes forever to read books. Forever.
I just really enjoy loving every word and every second of something. And with this, you could do that a little bit faster than something like The Way of Kings, for sure.
Yeah.
But also, it would have been less enjoyable if I tried to read all of the subtext because there wasn't that much here.
No. And I think that's one of the things I love about romance in that too is like that much depth to it a lot of the time. Sometimes there is, but I don't want that. I I don't want to sit here and think too hard about what's happening in this book. I don't want to sit here and like dissect something. I want to have a good time. I want to finish this book in hopefully less than 2 sittings.
And I think one thing that's also a spoiler free situation is for somebody who toxically does not read trigger warnings, you have to read the trigger warnings for this one because it makes it so much better.
Yes, I told Haley, she doesn't usually read trigger warnings for things, and I was like, you have to read the trigger warnings because I think the trigger warnings make it so much more fun to read this book. Cookies and cream ice cream being the prime example, also the one for accidental cannibalism. It's just because you know it's going to happen, but you don't know when it's going to happen. And then as it starts moving closer and closer to it, you're like, is this it? Oh, no, it's not. And then it was like, is this it? And you're like, oh my gosh. And then you get to know what's happening before the characters do. And I find a lot of enjoyment in that.
And it's so funny you say that because me being the oblivious person I didn't even realize it was happening when it was happening.
Oh. I think in our spoiler free version of this review, we should definitely touch on the cookies and cream ice cream.
The cookies and cream ice cream. Now, when this was coming up, you made it such a point to tell me about it before the book that there was a lot of anticipation. And because it was described as a dark romance, I was also expecting the cookies and cream ice cream to have something to do with sex in some fashion.
Technically, it does.
I, but you know what I mean.
I know you thought they would like freeze it into something and like put it places or whatever, but like that still kind of happened too.
That's not even what I was thinking.
Oh, okay. I live in a different world apparently. You just hit your head. Oh, it'll be a creative choice if we leave this much giggling in.
Okay. Anyways, so as I don't know what I was thinking, but it wasn't that. I'm not that creative.
Oh, that was the tame version I had in mind, but okay.
Tame? He's the dark romance girly. Whimsical wicked. Welcome. But as they mentioned the ice cream, what happened just before that? I was really trying to figure out how they were going to go from that to some sort of sex thing with ice cream because it didn't add up.
Yeah, no, that definitely wouldn't have.
Like I'm thinking like you need bleach, you need mouthwash, you need so many chemicals to make anything sex related okay after the incident that happened beforehand.
Yeah, I don't even know how you'd be in the mood for it, especially because like it's not like they did it on purpose. If it was on purpose and you're like you progress from there, like sure it was a casual Tuesday, but like it was an accident, so
Right. And so it's coming up and I'm like, how is this author gonna get there? And then they say it. And you're like, oh, and there's this shock factor. And my first thought is, okay, that's fucked up, that's so gross. And then I sit with it for a second. And then after I'm just like, is that really that bad?
honestly, like I'm this thought crossed my mind too while I was reading it because I was like, well, it's not like I haven't tried it before. It's not like I don't know what it tastes like. Sweet and salty ain't bad.
Might be okay.
It might work. Not advocate for strangers.
True.
Probably go with someone you've already tried, unless you want to ask someone new for that, in which case you do you, honey.
Should bring up my favorite book first.
Yeah, a little life will really get them in the mood.
But you know what? I'm just saying I would try it.
If the right human donated, sure.
I think I would be curious. Kind of like breast milk. You want to try it at least once. You could actually add breast milk.
It could have been all from people. I'm curious if there's a new dad who hasn't tried it. That has a partner that lactates.
I I hope that all dads try breast milk at some point in their lives.
Why not?
Feminism.
We're going to be diving into the spoiler portion of this. So if you haven't read Butcher and Blackbird yet, I would recommend, if you want to continue on with this, pause us, read it, come back, probably in 8 hours, because Haylee and I both crushed this book in about that much time, if not less. And if you are okay moving forward with spoilers, then welcome to the spoiler portion of this, where I will be asking Haylee her thoughts on some of my favorite parts of this book and ranting about some pieces of it too. So here we go. Overall thoughts on this.
Overall thoughts, from a super constructive perspective, I had some issues with the writing style. It wasn't as profound as what I'm used to, and I can confidently say that after finishing the book, I still love the profound feelings, deep thoughts about human life and right versus wrong, and I didn't get that here, but I think my mistake was sort of expecting it going in.
Yeah. This is not a book that's going to be profound.
No. But with that being said, I actually really liked Sloane, who is our female main character, and I do not typically like male leads in books.
Me neither. And Sloane is probably one of my favorites of all time. I like her more than Rowan. I feel like as a character, she had so much more than Rowan did. And she was just a badass. Like her webs, as an artist, her webs were so cool. I loved the concept of like hiding the clues in them, the colors she used, having it all planned out ahead of time. Those were so cool as her like MO.
Yeah, 100%. So I did like our main character, and I think the story was quite creative and quite fun. I do like a competition in my books, and having fun banter and things outside of the romantic relationship move the relationship along was really attractive to me. And I think the last piece is that once I was able to let go of all of the things that I was expecting out of the book and out of myself, I just sat down and had a really good time and was able to be so present in it. And that was something maybe I don't think I realized how much I needed it at the time.
Really good book to just get lost in, forget who you are,
Yeah.
and read it in one sitting, apparently. On the note of the game, what were your thoughts on it?
The game, so Sloane and Rowan as serial killers, they had Rowan's brother text them a serial killer in a location, but they didn't know who the serial killer was or why it was they were supposed to be killing this person. So they had to travel to the location, figure out who they were supposed to be killing, and then they would race to see who would kill them first. And I think the other important thing to note is that they always killed the scum of the earth. Just total asshole.
Every time there were also other serial killers that they were killing, and other serial killers that didn't discriminate against who they killed, versus Sloane and Rowan, who only killed people who they deemed to be morally black.
Yes. And when I was going through the 1-star reviews for one of our other videos, I saw that a major complaint about this book was that it was insta love, at least on Rowan's side of things. Sloane took a little bit longer. But the insta love was a major point of criticism. And what I think the author did a really good job in with this type of trope was making it really difficult for Rowan and Sloane to actually get that happy ending.
I think the time it takes, because the game takes place over 2 3 years, like you're not getting a quick romance out of this. It takes time and effort and a lot of convincing of Sloane on Rowan's part to get her to like open up and be willing to even give him the time of day.
Yes, and I really need adversity in my books. I love characters overcoming adversity, and that was a theme that I did really enjoy here. The pacing was quite good for the fact that it took place over such a long period of time, but the game was fun. It created some interesting scenes, like so much cannibalism, the ice cream situation made by seamen, chainsaw guy. There was so many creative ways that they were able to get out and about, killing people.
My favorite scene in the whole book is the dude in the wall from the first game. That was hilarious. Just her immediate, what are you doing? Why are you watching me? Why are you listening to this happen? And then he's trying to convince her there is this mysterious man in the wall who she cannot see at that point in time. So funny.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was also like her bait to get the serial killer so that she could kill him. And then the cutest little part, and I can't believe I thought that this was cute because I have no heart when it comes to this kind of thing, is that he ended up killing the guy, and then Sloane was about to run away, and Rowan starts yelling for Sloane to please stay. She stayed. And
It was
then
like
my
the first
heart
step.
and then my heart grew 3 sizes bigger.
Oh, when the serial killers take you away. Okay, speaking of cute, and I'm gonna jump to the end here. We're gonna go all over the place. But the proposal.
There was just no other way that they could have done it at that point.
I know. Like the biggest disappointment or letdown would have been if this was like a ring and a bottle of champagne, or if he'd like baked it into a cake or something. That would have been too vanilla for these two.
Yes, it had to be a little bit fucked up. And her theme of plucking eyeballs out and making this crazy art from it was quite interesting. But the proposal of him putting the ring in a little head hole, I don't know how the author got there, but the author got it to be cute. And for that, I applaud you, Brynne Weaver, because to be honest with you, it's pretty fucked up.
Still made you pause and go, "Aw."
Aww.
Looping back to the ice cream because it's just such a big overarching theme. Was did you catch Butcher's clues?
So I didn't catch the specific clues. To figure out that it was tropey enough to know that he was giving her clues in some fashion. When he was talking to her, I could tell that he was sending a message because that's what I expected to happen. I didn't know what exactly they were, and I love that they were tied to the ice cream.
I think at the end of the day, my takeaway from this book is everything ties back to cookies and cream ice cream. And we should definitely serve it more often, preferably made with people.
I am a little disappointed in how long it took her to figure it out, though.
I was like, that didn't traumatize you enough? Because it traumatized me enough that I remembered. I saw the dates and I was like, no, not
Yeah,
here again.
I knew right away because at that point, the characters were developed enough and had enough trust because I actually do think these two characters trusted each other too much too fast during this book. However, by that point, I think that there was enough trust over that couple of years that she should have known right away that he was trying to tell her something.
One of my other notes here was to talk about like her insecurity and how prevalent that was in their relationship and how it really played into that of her always doubting her own worth and if people actually wanted to be friends with her, which I think a lot of people can relate to. And how that really pushed her to like run from Rowan when she should have thought a little bit longer and stayed.
Yeah, it was probably her theme of being insecure that pushed her away, but like, I guess who of us hasn't done that before?
Yeah.
That one hits home.
That didn't make you pause for a second and think back to at least one relationship. I
But
envy you.
with that being said, that also ties into part of the reason that you love dark romance so much is I think it does really teach us so much about ourselves and our tendencies and our insecurities and almost reminds us to ensure that we're being confident and know what our worth is and who we are. So maybe that's my profound thought about a dark romance book that I didn't know I had in me.
The other thing I have written down here, and this is less for Haylee and more for the audience because Haylee hasn't actually seen this, but the beginning of this book, the second they started like talking and like gushing over each other as serial killers, I was sent directly back to Sandman by Neil Gaiman. If you've seen the TV show on Netflix, it's like the serial killer convention and how they were like nerding out over each other. And I just kept thinking about that convention where all of these serial killers are together having like, oh my gosh, it's Madonna moments. It's, they found like the Boston Strangler, which I just thought was really cute and funny to pull into a book like this. And then I have one last thing for us to look through for this one that I have scripted at least. And it is to listen to a snippet of the audiobook. I'm not going to include it in the recording for this because I don't think the audiobook should necessarily be consumed. Don't worry, Brynne is also on my side on this one. Just due to some of the controversy around the male narrator on it. But I am going to have Haylee listen to it for a second because I want to talk about the male narrator's choice in accent for Rowan. Because from my understanding from the book, Rowan is not a new immigrant to America from Ireland. He is like, he grew up here, he spent a decent chunk of time in the US before this book takes place. And the accent choice is just something else.
Let's hear it.
All right.
So I think we both know a fair amount of Irish people.
Yes, I manage more than one.
Right. Um, And I do find it so interesting how narrators plan and prepare for their audiobooks because that accent doesn't line up with the experiences that I've had, at least.
It is very stereotypically Irish in a way that no one I know from Ireland speaks.
Yes.
People that I know from Ireland have like they grew up there. They didn't move to Canada until they were in their like 20s. And none of them sound even remotely like that, except for like maybe one guy.
Yeah. And because Rowan had moved so young, I don't know that that accent would be quite that strong, but it also didn't sound particularly Irish.
I feel like it sounds like what you imagine an Irish person would sound like versus what someone with that accent actually does, at least the people that I know with it. And I feel like if I'd listened to it via audiobook, that would have bothered me a lot.
Yes.
I think it would have pulled me out of it because it's a lot of Irish accent. And someone that moved to the US probably like 18, 19 at like the latest was very it would pull me out of the story.
Totally. And I am so picky with the books that I choose to consume via audiobook. I typically only read my nonfiction books on audiobook, and I will only read fiction if it's a narrator that I really, really like. And I think it is so cool when narrators really prepare and treat it as an art, and I've seen it, and they're so well done. And to the point where I will read books as an audiobook to listen to a narrator. So I think it's so cool how narrators prepare. I don't think this one was very well done though.
I wasn't a big fan of that one. And I am the same when it comes to books. I actually prefer Stormlight Archives narration. It's so good. I'd recommend trying those ones out if you haven't because they're big books and honestly holding them up is really tiring.
Yeah, my wrists, like I'm gonna have arthritis problems at a very young age here. Stormlight Archives, maybe I'll do a reread via audiobook, but I like my maps and the drawings in those books are insane.
They're very pretty.
Big fan.
All right. Well, that ends our tangent.
What about the I'm 100% positive that you'll love me comments made by Rowan throughout the book?
I found those adorable. I thought it was cute that he was confident enough to be like, we'll get there eventually. It's just going to take you time. Like the fact that it, in a lot of ways, respected the fact that she was going to need time. It wasn't like, you love me now. It was, you will love me eventually.
What that comment says is that I accept you as you are.
Like he knew she wasn't going to get there as quickly as he did. And I thought that was so cute.
And from just, I'm not even gonna lie, I like the arrogance.
The arrogance is hot.
But that goes back to as we're talking about feeling insecure and having those times in life that we do feel insecure because no matter how confident you are, there are going to be times. I think having somebody who understands you to a level to allow you to be who you are, to accept you where you're at in life, and let you get somewhere on your own time is so attractive. So, with that being said, I think I will come to a decision on my rating for this book finally after it's been 5 days, I think. um, I had a good time. I have some problems with it, and it wouldn't be a book that I would just pick up off of a whim if you hadn't recommended it to me. I was pleasantly surprised. I barely put it down. So, from a constructive point of view, I will give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And if you are a type of person who doesn't typically pick up a romance and even kind of like a spicy rom com, sort of dark, raunchy romance, that's not typically your genre, I think this is a great starting point for somebody who's looking for it.
Yeah, or if you just are looking to try something new, spice up your reading life. Spicy books
And meat.
and meat and semen. Don't forget about the ice cream. It all has to come back
Have
to
some
the ice cream.
piercings. We didn't even talk about the piercings yet. I am not a big piercing girl. I only have my ears pierced. That is it.
Your nose is pierced.
I,
I'm looking at it.
my nose is also pierced. So I don't have a ton of super fun piercings. I do wonder what it would feel like.
I, as someone who has done some more creative piercings, not quite that creative, but like creative, I am like I was like maybe not those exact ones, but there's other ones you can get in that region that scare me a lot less.
There was just for me, there was too many.
I I kept wondering like if your partner also had piercings, like say like a Jacob's ladder or even a Prince Albert, would they get stuck on each other? I don't know if you need visuals for both of those are.
I can get creative without the visuals. Thank you
Okay.
though.
You're welcome. If you need visuals, audience, just give her a little Google.
You have the internet.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wish we didn't.
Well, like, would they get stuck?
I think so.
Could you imagine?
You could pull some funny pranks though on your partner.
Yeah.
I just do some funny things with a magnet.
I also was thinking like you could corset those things with some lace, jazz it up.
Ooh,
That might be fun.
spicy.
He gets to untie his present.
All right, thank you for coming to our podcast, folks.
All right. And we'll end it on that fun note. So thank you for spending this time with us. We can be found on Instagram and TikTok via Whimsically Wicked, a reading duet, although I'm pretty sure we'll show up if you look up Whimsically Wicked. You can find my social media as Daria Can Read on TikTok, Instagram, and Goodreads. And Haylee?
And my handle is just Haylee Johnson with a fancy little underscore at the end.
Quick and easy. Not the way Rowan likes it.
Thank you so much for being here. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, and please toss us a like or a subscribe. We really appreciate you being here, and we will see you next week.